Hey Marco, how's it going?
Hey, Snowler, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, living the dream.
So that is not a real background, is it?
Correct. It is fake because my home office is less than optimal as a background. And so when I'm working from home, I got this background.
No, that's all right. That's good. That's good. Okay. We will get into this. I'm not a podcast host, but we're trying this because I think it might be really useful for our colleagues to see us talk through these sorts of problems and identify with it and then come up with their own solutions. So
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I'm appreciative that you're taking the time. I know how valuable your time is, so I'm grateful you're doing that.
And we've talked before, right? You're out in Denver. Okay.
Yeah,
We talked about Miles Johnson out there. You'd had lunch with him.
correct. Correct.
Okay.
I'm awful with dates, but I want to say maybe 6 months ago we talked. You gave me, I remember every single piece of advice you gave me, and I have it in the notes tab, but I don't know when we spoke, but I know that we did speak.
We did. Okay. It's funny though that I mean, human beings, that's actually the last thing we tend to remember as human beings is the date at which something happened or the age of something. We have to put it in a story in order to be able to kind of figure it out,
Yes.
or we just need to have a computer remind us when it is.
Yep. That's how my brain works. I can tell you specific phrases people told me 10 years ago. I have no idea when it happened. That's just how my brain works.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I remember stuff. I will remember exactly what I read from something, then it could be 20 years ago, but it could be either 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yep.
So, okay, so let's lay things out for people that are watching this. Let's lay things out a little bit. So you've been in practice. You do family law in Denver. You've been out between 4 and 10 years, but how many years exactly?
Uh, touch over 6 years. So 6 years and 2 months to be exact.
Okay, and you worked for a firm before, and you've been on your own just this year. Is that
Correct, correct. I bounced around at a few different firms, couple years at each on average, and then January 15th, went out on my own. So a few days over 10 months have been at it.
okay? And kind of where do you sit right now? How many cases do you have, and so forth?
Yeah, so as a firm, we have 50 cases. I have an associate attorney. One of the things we're triaging right now is kind of what cases are hers, what cases are mine, what cases are co-counsel. Um, so roughly, I would say 35. I have full response. I mean, I have full responsibility for all of them, but I would say running point on is the terminology we use. And then she's about 10 on her own, and then five were co-counseling. So that's the rough breakdown of 50 cases.
Okay, and how long has she been with you?
2 months now, and she has a little over a year of experience. So
Okay.
a lot of it is mentorship, training, but all the prerequisites were there. So she's tenacious. She has a lot of pride in her work. So I said, like, I'm happy to train you as much time as it takes because I know those intangibles are there. And so it's been a really great collaboration, even though we're only 2 months in.
Good, good, awesome. Okay, all right, that sounds cool. And then what are your revenue numbers so far?
Yeah. So let me. Sorry, the attachment. I didn't have that prepped. I have a report. If you give me about 30 seconds to get
That's
that
fine.
thing. If you can go to the next question while I pull that up. I know that's an obvious thing to have generated, but I don't
Uh,
have.
that's okay. And then you have a paralegal as well.
Yep, I have. And this was a big deal. She was super experienced. She has 7 years of experience. So she's been about a month now at the firm, but she was plug and play, which was a huge deal for us.
How much did you have to spend to get her?
I knew that was the question. Yeah, not it, so a lot is the easy answer, and even to compound on the cost, which I'm still grateful for, was I got her through one of those headhunting agencies,
Yeah.
and so that added a significant cost, like
Yep.
that really was I had to plan around, um, and so when you combine those two things, yeah, it cost a pretty penny, but no regrets.
Yeah, because she'll return. Like she'll return so much for you, especially if you keep her for a while. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is one of the things that I tend to pay a lot for is paralegals. And I think it's harder to get good paralegals than it is to get good attorneys.
Yep. I've seen that in my preliminary search. And also, every person I talk to, every book, every article I read confirms this notion of overpaying for that top tier, not over, but paying market value for top talent. And I've seen it because I've had contract paralegals, temp paralegals, and I would consider them as average. And the difference between average and elite, there's no correlation. It's like exponential to that. And I'm reaping the benefit of that. So it's a huge deal. I have the financial report pulled up also, but sorry to cut you off.
No, it's all right. I'll say this and we'll go to that. So Alex Ramosi talks about this. He says an true A player costs about 150% of what a B player costs, but their production is about 5 times more.
Well,
so just spend.
Yeah, that's good to know. My intuition confirms that, like, I can feel it, but it's cool to have numbers firm that up.
Yeah, cool. All right. So what are your revenue numbers?
Yeah. So revenue, and this is as of last month. So as of October 31st, we've got revenue at 307. Well, it rounds up to 372 grand. And then operating expenses at 153 grand. And then net income rounding up, it's 218 and change, but 219 net income.
Okay. So 371, and how many months have you been in business?
So that would be 9.5 months. The first couple of weeks were just a couple. So I would say really 9 months, because I would round down from.
Okay. So about 40,000 a month.
Yes. Yes.
Right. That's not bad.
And yes, that is accurate just based on averages, but it was much slower. And now we're scaling up to much higher. So because with the attorney, with the paralegal, so it's scaling up fast.
Yeah. No, you've done a really good job. I think my first year I made like $36,000. So
that does put things in perspective. And my personality, my nature is I'm so grateful. And when I do take a moment to reflect, I'm grateful, but I'm like, what's next? What's the next ceiling? What's the next problem? But my wife always tells me, she's like, just take a second. Like you started. And so I am blessed. I am grateful, but on a day-to-day basis, I forget that.
Yeah. And so let's talk about this for a second, and we'll get more into kind of what your bottleneck is, right? Because that's really what we want to talk about here. But this is actually very, very common for people like us, right? For actual entrepreneurs. And it's a dopamine thing. Like dopamine, we get dopamine and we like dopamine, and we're kind of, we like to be addicted to it. But for us, we don't get dopamine from the realization of a goal. We get the dopamine from the doing of the goal, right? It's like the doing of the thing is the thing that really turns us on. So when we get to a place and we've accomplished a goal, it's kind of cool for a second, and then our brains just want more. And other people that are made differently don't really get that. They want us to stop and appreciate and whatnot. I think, nope, that doesn't work for me. Like I can appreciate it, but I can just run to the next thing because that's
exactly. I completely agree with all of that. And one thing that I also struggle with from kind of a psychological perspective, I feel that everything I'm doing, I'm capable of doing and should be doing. And so it reduces it's kind of depressing at times, but it's like, okay, I had $400,000 in revenue, and I want to have 5 attorneys. I want to have 3 attorneys. Well, if I achieve them, that means I had my God-given talent or whatever skills and perseverance and teamwork to be able to do it. So it's not like I didn't do something impossible. I just did what I was supposed to do. So that kind of diminishes my goals, but it reinforces the notion of what's next.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this life is about realizing potential, right? And we all have way more than we think we do, but still we have to go realize it. Like that's the game. So,
Yep.
All right. So your lack of systems, right, is what you think the bottleneck is, and that's workflow systems. So
yes.
Let's talk through that a little bit. And what do you mean by workflow systems? Like, let's do this. What are the most important workflow systems that you could create, maybe the top 5, that would move your firm along the most?
Yeah. So intake is the easy one to flag. The good news is I have, and of course we can talk about it, and I'd love your opinion, but I've got a game plan that I'm working on intake. Like the way I was describing in a team meeting is that when I'm looking at systems, there's, hey, this is okay for now. This is going really good, which is rare, but it's going really good. Or we need to stop what we're doing and not stop what we're doing, but in all hands on deck, or I need to figure out, like, there is a bottleneck. And so intake was one of those things that was a bottleneck because it was so choppy. I've got it up now to it's palatable, and I have plans to make it way more automated. So that one is not like an emergency or urgent. Whereas some of my workflow systems, that's kind of the big bottleneck right now, where we're figuring out, hey, I have co-counsel, the associate attorney's Adele, and so I have co-counsel cases with Adele. I have the new paralegal, her name's Kaylin, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how is the work flowing? Who's communicating with the clients? Because when I was running point with contract, really, I did everything. So if I wanted to, I would tell them contact this client. Now that obviously won't work. And so the system is, well, who's contacting who? Well, whose responsibility is it to give pleadings? Who's setting meetings? Who's doing this work? How are we doing tasks? And so that one is the urgent need. I've built that up a little. It's getting close to being passable. But that's what I mean by workflow management, of how do we progress this case now that three hands are on touching the case.
Okay. So let's do this. What's the structure? What's the workflow of your cases, right? Like 90% of the time, they're exactly the same in divorce. Like, what is that workflow and that structure for you?
Yeah. So, there's kind of a fork in the road. If the case is more standard or bordering, like, so let's say simple to intermediate, then the cases being onboarded are going to Adele for her to be primary on point.
I asked this question poorly.
Yeah.
So it's just a divorce. Like, somebody comes in for a divorce and hires.
Oh, I see.
90% of the time, that case flow is going to be the same, right? So what is that case flow? What are like the 4 steps that get you to, or 5 steps that get you?
Oh, I see. Okay. So, and you're assuming they've retained, so we're not talking about intake.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've got initiating paperwork, documents. You've got financial disclosures, which is a pain in the ass. There's no way around it. You just got to do them.
Everyone hates them.
Yeah. And then I would say there's initial status conference, but that doesn't deserve its own phase. I would say working the case, determining if you need experts. I would say a strategy after we get financials. There's kind of the strategy phase of, how do we advance this case? Is this going to be very simple? Where are we at? And the court's going to order mediation. So I would say that phase is that mediation phase, determining, can we go to mediation? Do we need expert reports? And so an intensive triaging phase, intermediate. And then
it happens before mediation, right?
Yes, that's internally how we do. Some people go to mediation and say, hey, let's figure this case out. That can work for easier cases, but I would say I'd rather know what I'm doing, and then not mediating for no reason. If we need an expert report, let's wait for that and mediate at once. So that's, I would say, kind of a planning phase internally. And then you've got mediation, which is, hey, are we close? Are we going to settle this case? I'm a settlement first attorney, so hopefully, most of my cases do settle. Hopefully we're able to settle, at which point it's the final paperwork phase. Or are we not settling? And it's kind of the fork in the road, as I describe it to clients. And now it's trial prep / trial is the last phase.
Okay. All right. So I'm really hearing initial docs, financial declarations. So those are 2 things for you. I put them all in the same, like, we do the same thing and we just put them, into one.
I think it can easily be lumped together. I agree with that.
Okay. So initial docs, financial declaration, then you move to the strategy portion, and then mediation is almost always the next step. I would imagine it's either mediation, or if you have temporary orders that you need, or
yes,
something like that.
And that would be after we get the financials, we start talking about strategy. And most of the time, those are going to flag themselves. Say, hey, I'm not seeing my kid. Hey, this is not happening. So that's kind of a built-in superseding step. If at any time we could ask for temporary orders.
Okay. All right. And then after mediation, is this going to go to essentially, does it get done or does it go to litigation, like
Exactly.
litigation and trial? Okay. So
Exactly.
really like 5 steps, right? Okay.
Yep.
So so when you're thinking about workflow systems and the bottleneck, what in that flow of a case is the biggest bottleneck step?
Yeah. And so the problem, and I'm not trying to be dense, it's just the problem is whether we're talking about my cases or Adele's cases. That's kind of one of the threshold questions. So, like on my cases, Kaylin's supporting me 100%, and Adele's on her own doing her own paralegal work for a couple of reasons. But for me, I don't have any problems with delegating to Kaylin and saying, "Hey, these are the financials," and we're still working on some of the communication. But the problem is when Adele is touching these cases, that's when it's like we have 3 people, who's doing what, and so that's the really big problem.
Okay. So then you can't figure out it. So really the problem there is you can't figure out who's doing what at any given stage in the case, right?
Exactly. Because like, for example, real quick example for financials, I want Adele to learn how to do financials at an elite level. Kaylin already knows. So do I say, "Hey, Kaylin, you do these financials?" Or, "Hey, on Adele's case, she's doing the finance. Does she ask me? Does she ask Kaylin?" Now we're wasting 3 people's time for what could have been a system-based solution.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just think about Adele's cases then, because you know yours. Although you need to, if you built out yours the way you do them, then you could just get her to do the same thing, right? So that's one way to think about it.
Yeah.
But let's just think about Adele. So okay. So really, it sounds like in the beginning, you just need to identify the thing that needs to be done right within the first phase, within the initial docs phase and what we call a FinDec, financial declaration, the FinDec stage, and then determine like who's doing what in that stage, right? Okay, so you'd go through and you'd say, okay, there's the initial pleadings. Who does those? How does that function? Like how does the prep work happen? Who does the prep work? And then Adele is going to put that together, or Kaylin puts it together and then Adele reviews it or something like that. Just think about the flow of how you want it to go. And then you just assign the person in those steps, like you step it out, right? And then you assign the person to that step. And you just walk through the entire flow of those. I'm using step way too much. Sorry, of that phase of the case, right? And you just have to go and like you either do it graphically, or I'm not a graphic guy. Like I write it out. I literally write out all the steps, and then I assign somebody to each of those steps. And then you have to find a system, a checklist system that is, okay, we got to do this. So here's the checklist. Here's the person responsible for it. And somebody's monitoring that. And that's Adele's job really, is to monitor what the progress is on the case. Right.
I see. And what about something like two systems, right? Say Sammer's cases follow this checklist, Adele's cases, because right now Adele's checklist, I don't want her using Kaylin's bandwidth. I want her she's in charge of it all. And then, and I love this idea of like this checklist and say, okay, for our cases, you're going to do step 1 through 3, check in step 4. And I think some sort of bifurcated system would be, it's so simple, but the way you're phrasing it, for some reason, a light bulb is going off, even though it's like exactly what I need.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because you're going to do cases very differently than how Adele is going to do cases right now. So there's no problem with having two different systems. That's totally fine. And honestly, like every attorney is going to have a slightly different system. So, as you get bigger and bigger, you're going to have basic things that you want all of the attorneys and all of the paralegals to do in every case. But then, there are going to be things that are individualized to the attorney. So I don't see a problem in that at all. But really, it's like sit down with is it Kaylin or Kaylin?
It's Kaylin. It's Cailin.
Okay. So sit down with Kaylin and with Adele and say, okay, these are the phases of the case, right? And in this phase, these things happen, and these are the steps. Let's write out all of these steps, right? And then we're going to assign who's doing what in this phase for Adele. And then you can do it for yourself too, but maybe start with Adele because that sounds like more of your bottleneck and more of your concern than your cases because you've done that 1,000 times and you know how to do it.
Perfect. Love it. Love it. That's like such a clear action item that I can get to work on immediately. Love it. I appreciate that.
And then I just think you replicate that for your different phases, right? The initial docs phase is actually really simple to do this because it's just rote stuff. The strategy phase is actually tougher than this because what you have to, this is the way I think about it. What you have to do is sit down and you review all of the data that you have, and then you have to come up with a systematic way to think through the presented problems. Like, okay, what do I, and maybe in realistically, what you can do is you can think of, okay, we have kids and money because those are the two things that people fight about in divorce. So when it comes to kids, what do I need to think through here? Do we need a protective order? Do we need temporary orders? Is this so complicated that we're going to need what we would call a custody evaluation? I don't know what you call it in
CFI.
Same thing. Okay. Yeah. Are we going to need that? Is this dude an alcoholic or is she a drug user? So are we going to need to get these? And you just write out, I think you just write out all of the problems that you present that are presented in your cases. And okay, how do we think through this, and this, right? Like, let's think through each one of these things. And is this present? What do we need to do to get the evidence to prove this sort of thing? And you just come up with that and you lay all of that out because you have a way in your own brain, because you're really good at this, to think through each one of these cases, right? Like you just don't know how you think through it because your brain does it. And it's the same thing with me. Like I can look at a case and within 5 minutes, I know almost exactly how it's going to go in the end because I've done this so many times, but I don't know how my brain thinks through that. And your job here is to recognize that your brain does it and you don't know how to do it, but Adele's brain doesn't know how to do it. So you just have to like, this is how I think through all these things. And this is what I think about. And this is the system in which I do it. And then you give it to Adele and say, you're going to sit here and eventually you're going to get really good at this. But in the beginning, you're not. So you're going to have to think about each one of these things individually and come up with a game plan for all of this stuff.
I love it. Love it. The only scary thing about that is the time, like to create that. And that's been another, it's not a specific like system-based bottleneck. It's just a life bottleneck is the time because I'm burning the midnight oil, like candle on both ends, whatever expression you want to use. Yeah. And so I love these ideas, and it's just I know the answer. I feel like I know the answer is just being intentional with my time and saying, look, these things aren't back burner. This is not, hey, I'd love to have. It's like, no, I need systems because what's happening right now is all time is going to the firm and putting out fires and case management, and then it's like space abhors a vacuum. So whatever space I have, it's going to be used by that, and so I think the soul searching portion is being deliberate, adding in a deliberate way to have the time. Cause I'd love to have a 2-hour block and create a system I'd love to have a 4-hour block, And so yeah. I don't know if you have any advice on that or if it's just a reality.
Oh, I don't know. I have a couple thoughts here. One is that it doesn't take you as much time as you think it's going to take you. It can certainly do that if you write it all down. So maybe one of the better ways to do it is you literally record yourself thinking through the problems as you're talking them out, and then you transcribe it, or you just have AI transcribe it after that, and then you make a checklist out of it. That can actually save a boatload of time. I tend to do that quicker than when I sit down and I type. I get a better product when I type it out though, because I'm like thinking through and revising and doing all those things, but it takes, it'll take 5 times longer. So that might be one way to save some time. There is no, it's going to take time. So there's no real way to do it other than to prioritize or just wake up earlier, or I mean something, and those are really unpalatable answers.
Yeah. No, I know, but that's how life is, right? It's like, it's sometimes if you want great results or good results, you have to do the hard work that other people don't want to do or can't do. And so I'm okay with that answer because I feel like that's a lot of things in life work like that.
Because if you don't do it, then you're going to have a system, and the system is every time there's a question, you're going to answer the question, right?
Yeah.
And that system sucks, and it takes up a lot more time, actually.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, you just need to block out time to get things done at this point. So, I mean, another way, I know a guy named John Fisher in New York. He created a system for essentially everything in his law office, and the way he kind of did it is he hired a high school student to walk around and literally like tape him on an iPhone doing stuff. And then the student would take that video and write up all the steps. They'd like go back through the tape and then write up all the steps. So that's one way to think about it. And he would just talk through what he was doing as he was doing it.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I had someone recommend Loom videos to do that, and that's and Loom has a feature. It's funny to see all these. Every time I get good advice, and then I hear another piece of good advice, and they reinforce one another. I'm like, oh, this confirms that that I'm talking to the right people. And so combining the transcribing thing with the Loom advice, Loom has a transcription feature where, like, if I'm recording these things, in addition to having a video, I can now have a transcript and create a checklist, 2 birds with 1 stone. Boom.
Yeah. You can certainly do that, and you would need to hire somebody. So you can, you can do it. But really, this strategy phase is you just talking about how you think through a problem, and then writing that all down, and then so there's that part of it. But I think a huge part for attorneys is that when you identify a problem or when you identify an issue in a case, then what you need to go through and do is then to create a framework to think about the problem, right? That specific problem, like, oh, okay, I need this type of evidence to prove this thing. Okay. And what type of evidence is that? And how do I go get it? Right. So you identify that, and then you think through it kind of like that. And those are like checklists, so for example, when we have allegations of sexual abuse in a case, okay, and we're defending that. So our client has been accused of sexual abuse in a case, then we have a very specific protocol, like, oh, okay, we need to prove through a psychosexual evaluation that this thing did not happen. That's like one of the steps. And then we also need to look at the allegations, and then what can we do to disprove them, and what kind of evidence do we need? So, but you can go through and just list off like, oh, the evidence here is going to be these things most likely, and the procedure can be this thing. You just need to do that for kind of all the different issues. But I think what you'll figure out when you start doing this is there are like 10 different issues in divorce cases most of the time. So it's not nearly as involved as you think it's going to be. Now, when you flesh out every one of them, it's going to be like 400, but don't flesh out every one of them. Flesh out the 10 that make up 95% of cases, right? Always start with that and do it that way. So that I think is the strategy phase. And then when it comes to mediation, this is actually this wouldn't be a very difficult phase. This isn't a very difficult phase to checklist out. Really, it's like, oh, hey, okay, we've gone through the strategy stuff. We're doing that. We're going to go to mediation. So what are our client's goals, and how are we going to, try to get our client those goals in mediation? So that means like, who do we use for a mediator in these sorts of cases? Have I checked over the financial declarations? Are those all in order? Do we have all the evidence that we need to negotiate intelligently about finances and about kids during the mediation? And have we called the client? If we had a meeting before mediation for an hour or something like that to go over things, like that one's actually not as difficult a checklist, I think. So you should be able to get that one done.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I've talked a lot here, but
No, you're good. I'm trying to get advice from you, so it should be a one-way street mostly.
so you go through and do that. And I don't know what your stats are. Our stats are about 80% of the time when we have a mediation at the beginning of a case, we get the case done in mediation, like 85% of the time. And then there's 15% where we're going to temp orders or we're really doing the litigation thing. And we need to think through that aspect. Really the 85% of our cases are initial docs, financial declaration, strategizing, mediation, right? So if you build out, and I imagine, it seemed like a firebrand to me. So I imagine that you're getting things done in negotiation about the same that we are.
100%. I'm probably 90-10 settling cases versus trial.
Yeah. And that's where you should be. That's really good. So if you build out those 4 phases, right? Like those 3 phases, then you built out 90% of your law office. And it seems daunting, but then you think, oh, that's literally 90% of it. That's actually not that daunting, right? So yeah, take the time that's necessary to do that, but it's not nearly as much as you think it's going to be in the beginning.
100%. That all makes sense. What about what kind of stuff does your firm do for like communication protocols? Because like you were saying, if your system, if you don't have a system, you'll still have one, but it'll be like basically a shitty system. And so I feel like communication is a big part of it. Is like, hey, what's our communication policy right now? It's nothing. Like, email, and I everyone on my team is great, so I don't mind hearing from them. They're trying to do their job, so it's 100% not their fault. It's just a question of when do we message? How do we message? Why are we messaging? Is this something that can be answered in a handbook? Are we emailing are we all emailing? Are we all in the same email? So do you have any guidance on that?
Are you talking like internal communications?
Internal communications, yes.
With clients. Sorry, internal or with clients?
I'm sorry. I had an interruption. I meant internal communications.
Oh, okay. Because the external communications with clients is like super simple. Like that system is actually one of the easiest and most effective systems that you can possibly implement in a family law firm. But when it comes to internal,
or even if it's needed, because if it's not like,
I don't think it's necessarily needed. No. Well, okay. Part of it is, and then part of it's not. So this is the way we do it. And this is the way we do it. And I think it's super effective. Every week, the attorneys and the paralegals meet, usually for somewhere around an hour to discuss every case. Okay. And we have, my attorneys have 30 cases. So they go through and they get that done. But they are to get together in a systematic way. And we have an SOP built out for this. If you want me to share it with you, I'm totally fine doing that. We have a standard operating procedure built out for this meeting. And they sit and they talk about the meeting. And it's really like getting everybody on the same page. And then the attorney talking through things. So the attorney knows what to do the next week. And then the paralegal like gets to know the cases, knows the cases well and can help the attorney. So that's like the one big systemic communication between the attorney and the paralegal. And then all of the other stuff is just what humans do, which is like they communicate when they need to communicate about stuff. But what we do when that happens is we keep all of that communication in Slack channels. So everybody can go back and see the communications, right? So like literally everything that happens in a case is supposed to go in the Slack channel itself. So we can go back and if we need to find something or we can't remember something, like we can literally go back to the conversation.
I see. I think the issue for my firm now is that we don't have those, like we just talked about, those policies are kind of checklists. That's not there. So there's a lot of communication about, hey, what's next? What are we doing here? How are we handling this? And compounding it with not having consistent case meetings, which is something we're talking about, but don't have. So it's chaos in the sense of each person is confirming each step because it's not a confirmed step.
Yeah. I think, that is a problem. And you'll fix that. I think the the thing that will help you the most though is to have those weekly meetings where you very, very systematically go over each case, and they are reviewed in real time between the attorney and the paralegal. Nobody has their phones on, like nothing, nothing like that. Like everybody's super present and you're just talking through those things. That's not perfect, but it solves like, 80% of problems, I swear. Like that's actually how we evaluate attorneys, is if they don't do that sort of thing, if they don't make Friday phone calls to their clients and they don't have weekly meetings with their paralegals, like they're not our attorneys, because they're so important that we found that when they don't do that, like everything just goes off the rails. So that's the first thing I do.
Perfect. No, that's an easy fix of just scheduling a meeting and doing it. So that's very actionable, and so I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. And then you can also do, as a firm, you're small enough where you can do this. You can literally get together and talk about cases every week, and just decide how many you're gonna speak about. So Adele gets to talk about 5 cases that she has, or whatever it is. That's less important than the attorney paralegal meetings, though.
Okay, perfect. And that's another thing of bandwidth, is just finding that balance between, hey, meetings are productive and helpful, but it's not like, because I've worked at firms, we all know the places that have just tons of meetings. Like, why are my meetings? Like, okay, let's talk about the next meeting at this meeting. Like, what? Like,
I know.
you could have just sent an email. And so I agree with the importance of it. It's just not wanting to overcorrect and go like meeting crazy, because I also have a running meeting with Adele weekly for a mentorship meeting, like 1 hour a week. Then we've got kind of a strategy motion review meeting. Then we got a firm meeting. And so it's like, I know these things need to happen. It's just a matter of being very intentional. And hey, can this be a 20-minute meet? Can this be a 30-minute? And just really being intentional with the time blocks.
Yeah, most meetings just suck, which is why we try to limit them as much as possible. So the paralegal meeting between the attorney and the paralegal, absolutely crucial for us, like super, super crucial. And then we have an executive meeting every day for like 10 minutes, and just to talk about the day, and that's really it. And then we have a team meeting on Friday. So I would probably, if I were you, I'd probably do like the team meeting. You can do the mentorship. You can do mentorship for 10 minutes of it, and then case analysis for like half an hour or 20 minutes or something like that. Try to get it all into one, because you're right. You just don't want that many meetings at all. You want to kill meetings as much as you can.
Sweet.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about those workflow systems. Yeah. If you go through that, I think that solves humongous amounts of problems. And you anticipate a whole bunch of problems, and it gives Adele a framework to think about all of her cases, and she's going to be way better when she has that, and then when she actually sits down and writes through that. And that I think is a big thing for her at this point, is that you can just sit down and think about a case, and I can sit there and think about a case, and within 5 minutes we know exactly what's going to happen, because we can process all that information, but she can't. And writing and speaking are the ways that we process things as human beings. So I would think that Adele should really sit down and literally write this stuff out for the first little while, because that's going to force her to think through the cases and the strategy. And then when she's done this for about 2 years, she won't need to do that anymore, because she's just going to know everything.
And what's interesting about this conversation, about this point, is she is very like detail oriented, list driven. So she's generated a ton of things that she thinks she should be doing in a case, which is ironic that that's what the firm should be providing in a sense of like, and so I'm going to ask her for those updated lists, and she might have done a lot of my heavy lifting for me already, coincidentally, because that's how her brain works. She needs systems.
Yeah, exactly. And she may well, but in pleadings, you can think about it the same way in pleadings. Like we have pleadings, but we have essentially like, okay, we can say A here, this is a paragraph about health insurance. And we can say A or B or C, and you just like list that out. And then really you're just picking between A, B, and C, right? Or, affirmative defenses. You like write out all the affirmative defenses, and then you pick which ones for a case, right? So you can do this for kind of everything in your firm and all of your pleadings, but that's a little bit later on. Once you get the framework for these 4 phases down, like that takes care of so much, and will save you so much time. It's amazing.
Perfect.
Okay. What other, I do want to talk through intake though, because I think intake flow is, I just love it with my entire soul. And I think it's one of the most important things that attorneys overlook.
100%. Yeah. So I share the same passion for intake. I want it to be, well, I want everything to be as perfect as possible, but I actually enjoy making intake perfect or striving towards it. So before, as the firm was launching, it was just scheduling. It was free consults. And I believe you talked me, you were a proponent of paid consults. And so we've shifted over to paid consults, and a lot of really good things have happened since doing that. Bandwidth has gone down intentionally. We get, still a couple calls a week of, oh, it's paid. Sorry, I'm going to look. And I'm actually like, this is great. I get excited when that happens. Cause when I quote you my $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 retainer, if you were worried about $97 for 30 minutes, we were never going to be a great fit. So I love it when and I know that seems counterintuitive for a business owner, but it just means I get more of the clients that I want, a higher percentage. And so, it was kind of a flying by the seat of my pants. Now it's online. They can book online for paid consultation, pay. I'm integrated with HubSpot, which I'm really proud of. It's really, really heavy duty. It's integrated seamlessly into Clio, so they can book online, give me everything that they need, so that it creates the Zoom link. So I'm from them booking, I'm literally hopping into a pre-made Zoom link. That's if they use the website. If they're calling us, speaking to our receptionist, and getting set up, either payments taken right there, or I call a couple minutes early, and I have a cushion anyway on the back end, but I start with payment. One of the rationales behind that was I've noticed people really like seamless processes. And so when they call, if we get them in and out, like build up that, and, get them excited about it, but we don't need 20 pieces of information. We just give us your name. If you want to pay now or on the console. So everything's been focused on streamlining it. Of course, if they need to be sold, like we're talking about that. But if they know what they want, it's like, let's just get it done. Let's get the consult booked. And so those are the 2 paths into a paid consult. I'm doing the consult. And then if I'm closing them, or to be closed, the steps required are signing a retainer agreement and paying. And so, right now it's Adobe Sign. I really like Adobe Sign. There's Clio, there's other options, but I love Adobe. I use it all the time. So it's a standalone option that's not integrated on purpose, because I don't like Clio's signature formats. So that's going out. If and when they sign that, then that is currently it's not automated. That's my cue to create a matter for Clio, send them the retainer agreement. And then once they pay that, they're officially a client. And then that triggers kind of the formal intake process into the firm. Right now, I have a guy working on automating that entire flow of, I send out the retainer agreement, triggers through HubSpot, through powers that I do not understand, and automatically creates a Clio matter and sends them an invoice, and then is going to send them the formal intake form. So that is what I'm really excited about. But currently I'm piecemealing those steps. And so I think they're good steps, but they're not linked together other than me doing them. So that was a very long-winded answer, but that's the intake process.
Okay. So let me ask a few questions here. So you do paid consultations, which is great. You should charge more for those paid consultations, but okay.
A quick side note on that. Last time you told me to increase my hourly rate, and that is working exceedingly well. So I have no reason to doubt your advice on that.
Yeah. But anyway, that's fine. You can increase it. You can keep it where it is. If you charge $5, it's going to weed out like 90% of all crazies, right? Or 95% of all tire kickers and crazies. So that's good. Okay. So if they don't sign up online, then it goes to your receptionist. Does your receptionist have a sales script that she?
So actually, someone from your team sent me a sales script. She has that. It's also my wife, full disclosure. So that changes the dynamics here a little bit. And so she has the sales script and she's reviewed it. Would I consider that formal training? No. She's aware. She loops in some things that have caught her attention, but it's not she's not formally trained on a sales script.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is the tough part about employing your wife, right? I've been married for 24 years. I love my wife dearly, and if I were her employer, I would no longer be her husband because I would tell her what to do. That just, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But maybe your system is different. Like you can tell your wife what to do. This is the tough part. If you can't tell your wife what to do, then go find somebody else who is right.
And that's yes, I agree with all of that. And when I'm reviewing for bottlenecks, that has the potential to be one because I would consider part-time, right? And this kind of depends on when the phone rings. I've looked at a couple AI solutions. I'm nervous of taking the plunge because I believe in a human connection. Like, not that I believe, like, I think AI could do its job. I'm just concerned. Like, it's kind of a leap of faith thing. I've sampled some products. I'm not ready to take the leap. So that's it's an imperfect setup right now with.
Okay. I mean, get whoever it is, like they do need to follow the script.
Okay.
Right. And they need to follow the script because you want to know your numbers. And if you have a script and they follow it, you know exactly what your conversion is going to be, right? Based on that script. And then you can make it better. But if they're just kind of doing whatever, then you have absolutely no idea why they're successful and why they're not successful. Right. So yeah, standardize that script and make them go through that script. That is probably the number one thing for intake, to be perfectly honest. So do that. I will tell you, like the AI side of things, it's not perfect. We're training one right now. We're using LexiDesk and we're training it, and it's quite good, but there's still problems with it, and there will be until there aren't, and then it will be absolutely utterly fantastic. And that's going to happen way before people think it's going to happen. So we're getting on like the front end of that. But if that's just not your game and you don't want to do it, then don't do it. It's totally fine. But just get somebody who's gonna go through the script and make the human connection, right?
Yep.
So that's that aspect of it. Then, okay, so you do that. Talk to me about you're on the phone with somebody in a consult, and they're ready to go. They're champing at the bit, right? And you say, cool, you need to pay and you need to sign the retainer, and then we can get going. So
yes.
Do you do both of those things on the call?
So no, my current, and just as you asked me, that makes me realize that I should be doing it on the call, but I'm not. And currently it's, hey, within 2 minutes of hanging up, you'll see an email from Adobe Sign. If you don't see, like if it's 1:47 right now, I'll say, if you don't see it by 2 p.m., check your junk or spam folder because it's sitting there. And so that's the current pitch.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So don't do that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but
no. I hear you.
At a higher rate, right? Which is what you want to do. Then you want to get it done during the call. So first thing is you take payment. You don't send out the retainer. Okay. First thing is you take payment.
Interesting. Why is that?
Because skin in the game.
Okay.
Like they have made. So closing somebody is the art of logically convincing them to pay you money and then getting them to pay you money. So when they have paid you money, they are closed. And it's way easier to get people to do stuff after they're closed, right? Because they've already made that big decision than it is to get people to close out. I
see. I'm still thinking. This is the first thing I've had to think about that I don't. I mean, I don't want to say agree is too strong a word, that I don't automatically understand. Because the way I was thinking about it is that the signing is kind of a stepping stone. Like, hey, let me read this, get familiar with it. I'm committing to the firm, and then the payment is, if you sign the retainer, it's like you're just gonna pay because you just chose the firm.
Yeah, so you can think about it like this, and maybe you're thinking about it like that because you don't have the numbers. But yeah. I've done this in my head because I've done this because I have the numbers and I looked at it. Yeah. So when people sign the retainer, then you get them on the phone afterward to pay, or you have to follow up with them and text or whatever it is to pay. Then you will follow up with them a ton, and many of them will not pay. They will actually sign the retainer, but many of them will not pay. But almost none of them will pay and then not sign the retainer.
Yeah, there it is. That's the key. That's the key. Now I understand.
Yeah. Exactly. So they have more skin in the game because they have paid, and then they will sign the retainer. Now, you will still have to run down some people to sign the retainer because people just kind of suck at this stuff. This is why you do it all at the same time. But that's like a 1 in 100 proposition as
I see.
compared to the other.
Let me brings up a problem from a kind of a systems perspective. My Clio, I create a matter when I send them the invoice, and so the reason I've been hesitant to do it that way is because if I send that out and let's say they don't pay, then now I have a matter in Clio just sitting there, which is like the official client designation just sitting there. And if they never pay it, now all of a sudden I have this cluttered Clio interface with a bunch.
Yeah, so you're just gonna have to change this around a little bit. So you get paid first. You don't send out an invoice. You just get them paid, right? Okay.
Within Clio or
just outside Clio. You just get paid. They pay something. They pay something. They pay your retainer. Okay, and then after that, you get them to sign the retainer agreement. But you do this all on the call. Okay. And maybe it's not you doing it, it's your receptionist doing it, right? Because that's how I do it. Like I close them and then I take them to our receptionist and I sit there with the receptionist until payment is made. Okay. And then I walk away and I say, hey, if you have any other questions, but Molly's going to take you through this, but if you have any other questions, I can always come back out. So he's then doing like the next step, but you do it all right then and there. And they pay the retainer, then they get the retainer agreement is what we call it. And they sign that thing. And then you open the case in Clio.
Perfect. Okay. I have an easy fix because on my website, I can accept payments that aren't linked to a matter. And so I can walk them through the website link, have them pay. And if they don't pay, there's nothing's happening. And so but then if they do pay, then I go retainer agreement. Then I create Clio. That's an easy fix.
Yep. And then you're not larding anything up, right? Because Clio, there's nothing in Clio to lard.
Exactly. And if they don't pay on the website, it's like it never happened. Zero bandwidth, zero clutter.
Yep. And then but you want to make sure that you get both of those things done on the call in real time. Otherwise, you will just lose people all over the place, right? And it might not seem like a really big problem now, but as you grow and you have 5, 6, 10 attorneys to feed and their families to feed, you will care very much about people in this process. So, okay, you do that. And then do you have an evergreen retainer?
No, I've got a standard get below or my discretion to request to replenish.
Okay. I would suggest an evergreen, and to do that, you need a credit card authorization. So that's that's all part of that intake process. So they pay they do the credit card authorization, and then we do the retainer agreement.
I see. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't have a really good excuse. I just like personal preference seems like such a shitty excuse to not want to do something. I don't have a strong reason. I mean, I'll force myself to reconsider. I don't know why I haven't aligned with the evergreen retainer.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've got nothing.
You don't have to. You're a human. You don't have to understand why. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're complicated creatures, man. Like, understanding why we do stuff is actually like usually a waste of time. So we just do something different. Just do it.
Yep. No, that's honestly how our working relationship has worked. You say do something, and then I do it, and then it works. I'm like, oh gosh, Mark is so good at this, and so I think understanding is that's a good point. Understanding is maybe not as important as I think it is.
I try not. It's funny. I try not to understand my. I usually can understand my behavior if I really kind of do it, but it's probably kind of post hoc stuff. So I usually try not to do that. I try not to dwell on it. I'm like, I'm just going to change what I'm doing.
100%. 100%. And that's one of the advantages I feel like I have as a small firm. I was telling my team this during a meeting. I was like, look, if something's not working, let me know. We can change something in 5 minutes. I was like, we can literally change it right now. If we all agree, and if I agree, like we'll change the policy. So that is exciting. And one thing, I don't know if you have a set itinerary or plan, but I wanted to put something on your radar to get your advice on. Because as I'm getting to capacity, I would say at capacity, in certain cases, Adele is not a good fit for Adele. My logical process, because we have no problem, thankfully, no problem getting cases. So to me, that's hopefully it'll always remain constant of my ability to get cases and grow.
Yeah.
But from a hiring perspective, to me, I've put a lot of thought into this. It feels like experienced attorney is like begging, like calling out my name of like, I need an experienced attorney so that I can shift more into kind of the management role, which really lights a fire for me, which is I'm very passionate. Of course, I love helping my clients, but I would love to help 10 clients, 20 clients from my case, and then help hundreds of clients. And so that's where I want to shift. But am I looking at that correctly? Do you have any other ideas about next hire type analysis?
I tend to think that, yeah. So an A attorney for you, you may just want to sit down and write out what your perfect attorney is, right? And
I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
They demand a bunch of money because of the next things I'm about to describe. But 5 years of experience, self-starter, can manage an entire caseload other than the 1 out of 100 cases he or she wants to brainstorm. Respectful, kind, interacts with his or her assigned paralegal. Open to feedback, open to firm systems as we pivot and grow.
Yep. Okay. So you just write that down and you go try to find that person, and that person is going to cost a lot of money. And
that's what's slowing me down, because I don't know if I can afford him. I know I need him or her, but that is, in my market, that's 150 to 200 grand all day.
Yes.
And so that's I guess part of the planning around it. I think step one is, do you agree from the limited information you have that I'm that is the next hire, and then two, making it happen. So I guess step one is when I want to confirm first.
Yeah. I think you should go there if you want to manage that. Those are the types of people that you'll need, because if you have let's imagine that you have 7 Adeles.
Yeah.
Like that's literally all your time.
Yes.
All day long. Like that's just all you're going to do all day long. Right. And you can have 5 of the people that you're describing in 1 Adele, right? Or, something like that ratio. But if you have like 2 Adeles and somebody who's really experienced, like that's going to suck up all your time. So yeah, you want to get somebody, a true A player that you're going to pay for. If you want to manage, like that's just what you have to do. So you're on the right track there. And then the question becomes like, how do I afford that? You afford it because you have leads coming out your ears and you're really, really good with intake, and you can convert potential clients into clients, right? But there is a period in where you are that you are just going to have too many cases, right? Adele's going to have some cases. You're going to have too many cases because you're going to have to hire somebody and then give them cases automatically. Otherwise, you're not going to have the money to pay them, right? And you're going to, if you don't do that, you're just going to flip out of your mind unless you have a huge reserve pot of cash somewhere. So,
I do not, and that's where I'm right at that phase. I'm bordering on that phase right now.
Okay, all right. So yeah, okay. So either you put aside all of the money, say you put aside like $200,000. So you do all of this work and you set aside $200,000 and you have that for an attorney, and then you're cool, and it's going to take you a while to get there. Or that's one way to do it. Or the other way to do it is you just have so many cases that you're up to your eyeballs, and then you go find that attorney, and you know that you can pass off 30 of those cases to that attorney from day one, and you're okay. But you just have to deal with the fact that for a period of time, you're up to your freaking eyeballs and you hate your life, right?
I see.
But
Okay, well
I don't see any other way to kind of get around it.
No, that's perfect.
You're at the size where you are.
That's perfect. And then I could kind of take a hybrid approach of setting aside, 3 months salary plus benefits, sitting there while simultaneously knowing that, hey, I have 30 cases, I can hand them to him or her immediately. I love that. That's so actionable. I'm gonna immediately start working on that.
Yeah. It does suck though. Like it's going to be really painful during that period of time. But once you get it done, once you have 2 attorneys that are kind of up and running, and you can back off your caseload by 85%.
That's my dream. My heart is happy, like fluttered hearing you say that. That is my dream. Like to get a complicated case come in through intake and know hey, John Smith's got
Yep.
this case. We're going to collaborate on this case, and he's got your back. That is so exciting to me as a firm owner.
Yep, that's a big deal. And yeah, whatever your, how much would that cost? How much do you think it costs in Denver? So ours is like our salaries, not salary, but what we pay income is like 175 a year. And then we have probably another 20 to 25,000 in benefits. So our package comes up to right around 200,000. I would imagine in Denver, it's going to be very similar, if not.
Yes, it is. And we have limited benefit offering, but at 75% of health insurance and some of those other, somewhere right now it's 12 to 15K, but that's because I'm not offering expansive. Someone like that, I'll need to expand the benefit offering. So your number sounds exactly in line with that.
Okay. Yeah. So you just figured like 200,000 a year.
Yep, 100%. But I cannot put a price tag on me having my mental health, my sanity to be able to get even more clients. So it's like, yes, obviously that's a ton of money, but that's going to reduce the bottleneck of me handling medium to difficult cases.
Yeah. And this is one of the places where law firm owners go wrong is they think of players as expenses, and they really should just see them as investments. Because say, okay, you pay $200,000 for an attorney, and that attorney, if you do things right, is going to return $700,000 for you, or $750,000, something like that. So our number is $750,000, and then about $200,000 as the benefits package. So, I think about it. I'm making an investment in a human being that's going to return like 3x in a year, 3.25x in a year, right? And I'm going to make that investment every day of the week. I just need to find that person. And that's almost nobody thinks about it like that. They just think about it as an expense.
Well, now I think about it that way.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, no, that's so helpful. That gives me that you just planned out my next 6 months, because that's the vision, right? I can visualize it. I can see it now.
Good. That's awesome. And that's what it is. Like if you can visualize it, and you can, for me, if I can visualize it, I can get a picture of it, right? Like literally a picture, and I can look at it. Like then I
100%. And there's been 3 or 4 things already why am I doing it that way? Yes, I need to do it that way. And I think one of my strengths is the firm size is like, yeah, I can go implement a policy in a week, in a month. And so it's super motivating, super exciting to get kind of the roadmap.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Sweet.
Okay. So we've been at this about an hour. Anything we haven't talked about that you want to?
No, that answers everything. The growth thing is really important to me, and my transition into management, that is the most important thing. So we adequately covered that. I've got system fixes, meeting fixes, time management fixes. I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Good
Sweet.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to thank you for your time. I know how valuable your time is. So when you can carve out an hour for me, it means a lot. And just know that it's not falling on deaf ears, if that matters for your analysis. It doesn't strike me that it does, but if it does, I'm going to, enact these changes, and I appreciate it again.
That's awesome, man. Okay. Well, let's talk again. You ever need me, like, just let me know. Honestly, like it's great talking to you and giving you something that might make your life a little bit better and your family's life a little bit better.
100%. Well, yeah, thanks for your time, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, brother. Talk to you.